sports are really important vehicles for relationships.
We have purpose. We have a why. We bring people together. We connect.
I feel like God is our greatest supporter and our greatest coach.
Welcome to Rabbi on the Sidelines from Sinai Temple. I'm Rabbi Sherman. We are here to speak about the intersection of sports and faith. This week we are joined by NBA veteran Mike Gminski, the number 7 pick in the NBA draft. He left Duke University as the leader in points, in rebounds, and in blocks. He is now an ACC network college basketball broadcaster. He has an amazing inspirational story of hope through addiction and sobriety and Rebound Institute. And we are thrilled and honored that Mike Gminski is joining us this week. Mike, it's so just a pleasure to have you. And I've seen your work over so many years, and it's wonderful to speak to you in person. Thanks for joining.
Rabbi, thank you so much. And I tell you what, the background picture, I owe that photographer a ton of money for getting me to block a shot from Kareem, who is the greatest center that I ever played against. So that I've actually got a photo of that too. It's a very special memory for me.
I was thinking of which photo to show Mike Gminski, and we're in Los Angeles, so I might get some slack for that. But I have family in Philadelphia, so the Sixers over the Lakers for that one, with Magic Johnson watching in the background for sure. Yep. So we're going to start with the mundane and the ordinary, which is basketball, even though it meant so much in your life, and then we're going to move towards the sacred. Okay. So basketball, you grew up in Monroe, Connecticut, and you end up at Duke University before Coach K. I want to ask a question about Coach K before we're ending here today. Mm-hmm. But what was your journey? I know you were 6'11" by the time you were age 15. You basically had basketball written all over it. Was it something that just came naturally, something that your parents wanted you to do? What was the basketball journey?
Well, I loved baseball growing up, and as I kept growing and growing, and back then there were no Randy Johnsons or any tall players that I could really emulate. So basketball kind of presented itself to me, and I really started playing only competitively in the 8th grade. I had some allergy issues and asthma issues growing up, but that was my start. And then, I was 6'5" in the 8th grade, 6'7" as a freshman, and kept growing 2 inches a year. And you talked about, me and so always tall. And I started getting recruited in my freshman year. I was starting on the varsity. And, recruiting was a lot different then. The assistant coaches were on the road all the time. They had to go to small towns to find players. And, but if you were a talent, they would find you. And, I just kind of narrowed down. I guess the story that's different is I decided to graduate from high school after 3 years.
Right.
Which was unusual then, not so unusual now with reclassification and guys moving up and down. But I felt that the league that I played in wasn't going to be much of a challenge for me in my senior year, and I thought a freshman year in college would be more beneficial. And, that's what I went with.
It's interesting. It's like the exact opposite. Now that kids go to prep school and it's doing 5-6 years or redshirt until they get there. And here you said, you know what, I'm going to make that jump. Take us to Duke, because Coach K really wasn't there yet, and it wasn't necessarily the program that we know today. What was the inspiration to go there? And I know you're still connected there. We had another great Blue Devil on here a couple of months ago with Jay Billis. And why Duke? And then how do you see that trajectory from when you went to Duke to what it is today?
Well, it was Duke basketball is a continuum, and coach named Vic Bubas had really great teams at Duke in the 60s for the whole decade. And then he left and things dropped off. They hired my coach, Bill Foster from Utah, who was known as a program builder. And he came in and recruited me. And, I saw things trending in the right direction. Jim Spinarkle was the class ahead of me. Then I joined in, and Duke was really it's different today than it was then, but there were, I knew areas that I wanted to leave the Northeast The Big East didn't exist at that time. ACC was the best conference for basketball, and Duke was a great fit because a lot of their student body was from the Northeast, but it was in Durham, North Carolina. So it was really the best of both worlds for me. It was a perfect fit, great academic school. And, I loved Coach Foster, and I loved the direction that things were going in.
So when you leave the school, you're the leader in blocks, rebounds, and points. And I know when somebody sets a record, they want to stay up there. But then as it was broken, I think you're number 10 or something, or 8 on the list in scoring right now. What does it feel like, number one, to set that record, and then number 2 years later when it's actually broken? Is that a sense of pride? Is that a sense what is that like?
Well, I'll tell you a cool story that actually Johnny Dawkins broke my record in 1986. And then fast forward to J.J. Redick, and he broke Johnny's record. Now, when I was broadcasting the game when J.J. did that, and Johnny was an assistant coach, so all three of us were in the building. And Johnny, before the game, came up to me and pulled an envelope out of his jacket. And he said, "Do you know what this is?" And I'm like, "No." And he says, "This is the letter you wrote me when I broke your scoring record."
Oh my gosh! And
then he pulled another envelope out, and he said, "This is a letter that I've written to JJ to give him after tonight." And it was really so surreal because I was in the broadcast position. I was right on line for Redick taking the shot, and Johnny stood up on the bench, and the three of us were like right in line. The basket goes in, he breaks the record. But that's a snapshot of what the Duke Brotherhood is all about.
Actually, in our tradition, we call it Lador Vador, from generation to generation. And three people coming, I mean, you, Dawkins, and Redick, coming from really different backgrounds, but forming that family there and passing that literal ball down from generation to generation. I love it. And what about Coach K, now that this continuum continues with, taking somebody in the family with Coach John Shire, actually an active member in the Jewish community who has played representing the United States in Israel. What do you think of Shire taking over and that whole continuum of coaches also, right? Coach K retiring, taking the 1-year vow, Coach Williams leaving sort of sudden, and then my man, Coach Boeheim, still sticking around.
Yeah, it's it's going to be a changing of the guard for sure. And I mean, you've got Hall of Fame coaches that you just mentioned, and then Leonard Hamilton down at Florida State is 72 as well. Right now Tony Bennett looks to be the heir apparent. He's won a national championship at Virginia already. But some great people and coaches leaving. For Coach K, I was there at the beginning when they hired him, and his first couple of years were not real smooth. And the thing that saved him was the recruiting class of Dawkins and Billis and Allery and Henderson, that group. He turned things around. He was very competitive. He wanted to compete against Dean Smith at North Carolina, and at the same time, Jim Valvano was coming into NC State, and Bobby Cremins was coming into Georgia Tech. So they were the young Lions trying to get up on top.
And so here's a little clip of you speaking about the NBA draft when you were drafted. It's actually with J.R. Reed, and you said something interesting that we'll listen to that I think is a beautiful life lesson and a lesson of faith.
Well, there was no digital network. It wasn't carried live on any TV. But you know what? The process was so much different. There was no draft combine. The Nets came down and interviewed me. It's the only team that did interview me during that whole process. I flew up to New York. I knew that's where I was going to get drafted. But I think the one thing that's consistent, JR, is the anticipation and the anxiety before you get picked, and then the relief after it happens.
Absolutely.
I think that's a really important point, not just about basketball, but about life. The anticipation and the anxiety that occurs in a moment like that. Take us through that moment, but maybe we can talk about it in the more global level of going through life with anticipation and anxiety, not knowing what will come next.
Well, the thing when I was going through that, there weren't any mock drafts like they have now. I mean, they have those starting a year before the actual draft. Mm-hmm. So I don't necessarily know that that's a great idea either. But, for me, you let your 4 years in college, that's your resume. And as I said in that video, the Nets came down. It looked like they had the 6th and 7th pick that year in the draft, and they wound up taking Mike O'Corn, who was from New Jersey, who played at North Carolina, who I played against. And we become fast friends. We come in as rookies, not knowing what we don't know, and made our way through the league. And for anxiety, it's just the fear of the unknown. Of things that you really have no control over. You spend a lot of time, I think, wasting energy on that. And and as far as with my faith, that's a known quantity, and that's never an unknown for me. So that really helps me when I face those situations about what am I going to do going forward.
So what was your faith background growing up, and did that play into any of your sports career, at least up until the NBA?
Yeah, I was baptized in the Catholic Church. Really got turned away from religion because at a young age I went to it was a Polish diocese, and the mass was done in Polish.
Got it.
So I didn't understand. I kneeled when everybody kneeled. I stood when people stood, and I sat when they sat, and that's about it. And my spiritual journey early was on my own. And, my playing days in the NBA, I gravitated to the Presbyterian Church. And so my faith has always been strong. We'll talk about when I was angry with God. But still the faith was there. And it's been so instrumental for me in the last 2 years.
So let's go to the court in the NBA. This is the Nets playing the Celtics, you against Robert Parrish, and we'll talk about, are there miracles on the court, or is it just the skill and talent?
Robert through the rest. 8-4 Celtics. G with that other hand. Great game Sunday, wasn't it? Celtics and Sixers. Nice move. Good rebound by G. Toronto got the wrong guy. Right. Instead of Tadic.
Just one of many amazing games from you on the Nets. I see the smirk there as you're watching that. What does it feel like watching that so many years later?
Well, and that game, somebody I'm beholden to. It was a game that I scored 41. I had both career highs in the same game. I had 41 points, 23 rebounds against maybe one of the greatest teams in the history of our sport, the 86 Celtics. So that was very special for me. For one night, I was the best player on the planet. And, I only visited where Larry Bird lived for his career, or where Parrish and McHale were Hall of Famers, But the funny thing is, the next game I had 37 and against the Hawks, and but then I settled into my normal range where I was. But that game is very, very special to me.
And what is the grind like on an NBA level? I mean, it's not just like a college, a game here, a game there. Obviously, they're, playing a pretty major schedule right now. But, like, to keep that up, and at 14 years in the NBA, just a lot of success. How do you do that physically, but also emotionally and spiritually to keep it up at that level?
It was such a shock to me when I went from Duke to my rookie year. Just to give you an example, and this is back when they've subsequently banned this, but when they played 3 games in 3 days,
wow,
we would do that during the course of the season. And one weekend in particular, we play the Lakers at home in New Jersey on Friday night. We play the Pistons in Detroit on Saturday night, and then we flew to Washington, bussed right to the Capitol Center, and played the Bullets at 1:00 on Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah, I just, we went out. People slept on the locker room floor. We showered and went out and, got hammered. But that was life. And plus, there was no chartering back then. We flew commercially, and I flew commercially for the first 10 years of my career, which adds a whole nother layer onto it. But, and the thing too, I talked about Mike O'Corn. He was very active in the Fellowship of Christian Athletes at North Carolina. And he was one of the guys who started. We had a Bible study before every game and every home game, and then also most teams had one, in their home run. So we had guys from the visiting team come in with us before the game. And it was conducted. A guy named Albert Long did it for us in New Jersey, but that was something that virtually every team had.
Yeah, I was just talking to an NBA center who's playing in the game right now, and he said 45 minutes before tip-off, there's a prayer group from both teams, right, that gather by choice, of course, separation of church and state, but that it's really interesting to hear that these ritual faith aspects are actually occurring in the arena in real time. And I think it seems like that people that I've been speaking to, it's an important piece of not just getting through the grind, but actually allowing them to spiritually grow as well.
Absolutely. And, I can't stress, I wish that people could be inside a locker room sometime. It's the least divisive, most disparate, place on the planet, really. And, I've had the good fortune, and again, it's, it's just not the home team. It's guys from the other team, and it's open to everybody. And there was never no animosity or anything from the guys who didn't participate. That was just our choice. And it was a beautiful moment, before a game.
So we speak about God. You said we're going to speak about in a few moments when you were angry at God. I always actually say that a rabbi or a priest, I wouldn't go to that rabbi or priest if they had 100% faith in God. And I mean that in the most sincere way, meaning we deal with God by actually dealing with our own doubts and our own doubts of faith as well. I got to learn about you as a kid, actually watching those ACC games on Sunday night with Jim Spinarkle. That Syracuse has joined the ACC, watching you do some Syracuse games as well. But during these past few years, you had some doubts in God, and I want to share with you first. Actually, maybe we can share first your story of addiction and sobriety over the last few years. You mentioned in some of the clips that you were dealing with this during the NBA, but didn't really show. But I believe a couple of years ago, at the passing of your fiance of blessed memory, you really had some hard times. So if you're willing to maybe just share a bit about that.
Yeah, it started really in 2000, and my marriage was not in a great place and was not getting better. And my ex-wife's business failed, and so that took a huge hit on me, or made a huge hit on me financially. We wound up getting divorced, and then I meet Sarah Culpepper, who fell in love with each other. She was 23 years younger than me. And, we got engaged, and I thought things were, the ship was riding, and then she passed away. And we got engaged in 2013. She passed away in 2015 because of complications of her liver and a congenital heart defect at the age of 32.
Wow.
And that it sort of short-circuited my wiring. I just and rather than do the thing that I should have done, which is seek professional help, I decided to self-medicate and started drinking really heavily. And this was over the course of 5 years or so before I sought treatment. But there was those catastrophic life events that I couldn't deal with. And then especially with the death of Sarah, I was so angry at God. I'd cry every night myself to sleep and just, curse at him and say, and ask the question, why did this happen? Because I was always worried about me predeceasing her with a lot of her life left to lead. So I just, I'd like to say none of this went as I had planned, but that's
exactly.
Not many things go as you planned.
No, absolutely. And it's interesting you speak about the basketball family earlier, the Duke family, the NBA family, and you said when you were a rookie, who brought you under your wing. And in fact, when another player was a rookie, Jason Williams, you brought him under your wing. Jason Williams, very well known, not just for his basketball prowess at St. John's and within the NBA, but also for some difficult times that he faced, both some mistakes that he made. And that's actually where I found your story, not beyond the broadcasting world, but your interview with Brian Gumbel just a couple of months ago, and reaching out to you because you did then take it in your own hands. You took your faith in your own hands. And I believe it was actually your son who said, Dad, we're going to make some change. In our tradition, in the Hebrew, it's called teshuvah. It means repentance, but it really means to move into yourself. Maybe share how your son allowed you for that reawakening to say, you know what, we're going to make a change here.
Well, a couple of things happened. After Sarah had passed away, my teammates at Duke, everybody was incredibly supportive of me through my grief. But they saw me drinking the way I was, and they gave me a hall pass on that for about 2 years. And then they tried to have an intervention for me, and I was not receiving that message at that time. I said, look, I know I got issues. I can handle it. I can deal with it. And I let my ego get in the way. Just the bulletproof mentality that athletes and people have. And then, as time went on, COVID really was the thing that put me over the top. I was basically in my apartment, isolated and drinking all day long until I passed out. And then I'd wake up and do the same thing. A couple of months before, I thought I was being real tricky, and I was throwing some wine bottles out in the back to try to not build up the recycling. And my son found them, and I went out, and it came back, and he had gotten all these dirty wine bottles and lined them up on the table and said, Dad, I love you. I want to help you. And, we had an intervention in late June. And, he sat the computer in front of me, and it was a Zoom intervention with the people down at Rebound. And I was ready then. That moment of clarity came over me. I knew I was just waiting for somebody to do this. I didn't have the strength to do it myself. And thank God for my son. We have an amazing relationship now, and had one before that, or else, I don't think this would have happened.
Mm-hmm. So here's an interview on The Fault about who sent you to Rebound, and we'll talk about Rebound after.
Concurrently,
Jason Williams, who was, once you played with him in the NBA, and now he's your counselor. How is that?
It was like God he steered me down here. I fully believe that. And, Jason was a rookie when I was with the Sixers.
Right.
So, and he was like a unbroken colt back then, just so full of energy. And he would go back to New York City from Philly every chance he got. And, it was interesting seeing him on that end. But then just so ironic that I would come to him for help, all these years later.
Right.
And I knew, I felt completely comfortable with him and the program. And it just made sense on every level.
Let's talk about Jason Williams for a second. Maybe you can talk about the change in him that you saw, right? Literally imprisoned for homicide, and then changes his life around and now helps others. Seeing him do that, maybe talk about that process and then how that led, as you said, ironic in our tradition. I keep using some Hebrew words, but hashgachat pratit means divine intervention. That, as you said, God steered you to that place, but maybe also God steered Jason Williams to be your teammate those many years ago. So
and we've laughed about that, Ayers, and it was with Jason, and we've talked a lot about his time in prison. He spent 27 months there, came out, was not in a great place, and he was in a house up in the Catskills, isolated out in the woods, just drinking all day long. He blew up to like 330 pounds. And one guy who was close to Charles Oakley, and another guy, Curtis Martin, who great running back with New England and the Jets and Hall of Famer, and he actually leads our prayer group every Wednesday. But Curtis and Oak went up to the house, and Oakley actually had a baseball bat with him. And Jason, he went willingly. They brought him down to Florida to, put him inpatient, and they asked him what the baseball bat was for. And Oak said, "You were coming with us one way or the other." And if you know Oakley, that's, that's right in his wheelhouse. But, Jason's been sober for 7+ years now. And he's doing amazing work down at Rebound. And it was just so, it was cosmic and it was God driven that I should reunite with him after our first meeting.
So here's a quick video of Jason Williams and you coming together at Rebound.
Jason Williams, former NBA All-Star. Mike Gminski, not an All-Star. We're both passionate about rebound and sobriety. Let's go. Well, I'm passionate about sobriety. I'm passionate about helping people, but I'm more passionate about my routine. I go to bed at 8:30. I wake up at 3:25. I have no alarm clock. Passion wakes me up every morning. And the first thing I do when I get to our farm, which is a farm here, is I let the chickens out.
So I think that line that Jason says, "Passion wakes me up in the morning," is an unbelievable line of faith. What passion wakes you up in the morning? I don't know if it's 3:30 in the morning like him, but how does that work?
Yeah, we have a little different internal clock, but not that far out there. And for Jason, I mean, the thing, he's got a condo down by the beach, and the cell that he was in prison was so small that it was just really a claustrophobic nightmare for him. So every morning when he gets up at that time, first thing he does is goes out to the beach just for free space and to enjoy God and to, watch the sunrise and just have that every single day. And what they pass along down at Rebound is the adventure therapy, just getting you outside your comfort zone. And for me, that was manifested in skydiving, which I'd never done. And after having done it down there, it was the most amazing experience that I've individually had. And it really, again, it reinforced me as like, I went skydiving. I can do this. I can deal with addiction. You don't ever get cured, but I can deal with this on a daily basis. And that's what that treatment is all about.
So take that passion to the sports world, right? When you're involved actively in professional sports, you have to have the passion. If somebody doesn't have a passion, they're not surviving that. And then the sports world ends, and all of a sudden, a 14-year career in any other business is not long, right? And then, now what? Take us to the broadcasting career for a moment. Was there a passion there? I remember watching a little clip that said they threw the headset on you, and there you went. I was trained in public speaking. That's my profession. What did that look like? And what is that like to share other stories, right? When you're on the air, what do you want to share with the audience to allow them not just to enjoy a game, but also to really learn something deeper about humanity?
I guess the biggest lesson, or one of the best words of wisdom that I ever received when I first got into broadcasting was to be yourself. And be true to yourself, be true to your nature. Don't try to invent something that you're not, that you won't be able to sustain. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've been able to do, and especially now in recovery, is, my story is out there. And you having me on, as a guest allows me to tell where I've been and where I am. And, I think just by being transparent and being open has brought me closer to God and given me a lot more strength. And I just try to let that come through on every broadcast, every opportunity that I have to speak about it.
It's actually interesting. One of my first guests was Dave Sims. I've probably worked with him in the past.
Good friend of mine. Yep.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And he said, faith in sports is, when they say, "I thank God for winning," well, the left fielder doesn't thank God for losing. So what actually do you see the role of faith in the game, right? Often when you're going to interview a player after you interview Buddy Boeheim after Buddy Buckets, sinks 35, I thank God. Well, you're not thanking God after he loses. So what do you see the role actually? We talked about the pregame, right, on the court, maybe the after game. We thank God for allowing us to play, but is there a role of faith actually in the moments of sports?
Yeah, I think you were, and that's the thing that has expanded for me as well. The act of gratitude and the act of being thankful for being healthy, the gift of another day, and the gift of being able to live my life in as to His will. And one of the things too that I've learned is that you have to, God is there through, losing 12 games in a row or winning 12 games in a row. And you can't just be thankful when things are good. You have to be thankful in any circumstance. And that's certainly, he was with me when I was drinking, I know that. And, and certainly was there when I decided to make a change in my life.
So you quickly mentioned the prayer circle with Curtis Martin and I believe Oakley, and what does that look like? Is that through Rebound? Is that just a personal group of athletes that are praying?
Jason and Curtis started it a number of years ago, and it's every Wednesday down at Rebound. We call it Wellness Wednesday.
I love it.
It starts out with a prayer group at 8:45, and Curtis leads it, and goes on for about an hour and a half or so, and interaction. It's a call, and there are probably 70 people on the call at any one time, but all of us are on a speakerphone at Rebound. And it's people who've been through that program, alumni, and other people who've just like to jump on and get some encouraging words and get some scripture in the middle of the week. And it's fabulous. And even now I'm a part of it. Every Wednesday I'll jump on wherever I am and be a part of that group.
And I know, look, as my dad used to say, it's only like when my teams used to lose, right? It's only a game, right? But is it only a game to a college basketball player, to a professional basketball player? Is it more than a game? Or what is this role of sports actually in our world, specifically in the American society today? And actually, over these past 2 years, number one, last year when you were doing games in empty arenas, what has that hope and faith brought back when when Cameron's full house in a Duke game now?
I think the big thing is that, it's not certainly not life and death, but that being said, it's, you're very competitive as an athlete. You're out there in front of 20,000 people. You don't want to, be cavalier about how you approach it. You're with a team. You're trying to win. You're trying to do things the right way. And like I said, you talked about, thanking God after all that. And I've never done that for that very reason, that, I'm thankful for other things, not for the fact that I scored 30 points or the fact that we won the game. But the other side of that is that competitive nature, which you have to have to be compete on that level, and also to get to the network level in broadcasting, worked against me because I thought that I was more powerful than addiction. And that really led to my downward spiral.
And talk about, now that you've, you said this is never cured, but you live with something. The other either athletes or people that now you have inspired to also either do an intervention or find that hope, inspiration, and faith. How has that felt on the other side? Just as Jason led to you, now I go back to the metaphor of you, Dawkins, and Reddick, right? So
yep.
Now Jason led to you, you lead to somebody else. How does that feel, and what's your work look like there with Rebound?
Well, it's, and I tell people that the thing that's worked for me is of mindfulness and being in the moment and being present every single day. If I were to sit down and say, I'm never drinking for the rest of my life, that would be, one, overwhelming, and two, unrealistic. But so I've decided to say, I'm not going to drink today. That's nice. Every day that I get up, that's the decision. I'll pray and make that decision. And I can manage 24 hours. The rest of my life is, is another thing, and who knows how long that's going to be. But I can manage this day, and I'm very grateful for every single day.
You're writing a lot of sermons for me, because that one is called a Hayom. Hayom means today. And actually on our High Holy Day season, we say that word over and over again. And what's going to happen tomorrow? Well, I don't know, because as you just said, Hayom, it's actually about this moment. Obviously, you can prepare for tomorrow, but you live actually in this moment as well.
I saw a great saying that said, just spend time where your feet are. Yeah. And, and when we, as a culture, so taken with social media and everybody having their face in a cell phone, we're not in the moment. We're somewhere else, or we're in the future, or we're thinking about the past, and the moment gets lost.
It's a little crazy that you said that, because I'm going to move this way, and that book behind me is by Scott O'Neill, former CEO of the 76ers, Be Where Your Feet Are. Yeah. He just wrote that book this year, so it's pretty crazy. And then how about this last question of, we talked about faith in the sports world, but do you think that sports is actually needed in the faith world? And I say that my senior rabbi, Rabbi David Wolpe, we had a conversation the other day saying that you should take faith where people are, right? That basically don't just come into the synagogue and into the church, but what we do in our daily life should include a moment of faith. So do you see those connecting in any way, or do you say, you know what, we separate them and the kids play basketball and then they go to synagogue and church?
No, I definitely think there's a place for it in sports, and because, that would then lead you to say, I'm leaving my faith behind when I go out and play, and then I'm just going to I'm going to go to my locker, get dressed, and put my faith back in me, and go. It can't work that way. So I think that that has to be a part of you. We talked about the study groups before the games, where we invite our own teammates to come. We invite the other team to come, tell them where it's going to be. So it's a very inclusive thing. And, you see athletes shake hands after games or hug, and there's a lot of respect there. And there's also a lot of shared spirituality as well. And so I can't disconnect myself from my faith.
Yes,
it's with me all the time. And I like to, shine God through me in how I conduct myself every 24 hours.
Well, I love that. Shine God through you every day of our lives. That is an amazing, amazing moment right there. Going back to the mundane to conclude, college basketball is pretty much some parity this year. Number ones are dropping left and right. It's getting to mid-February and all of the conferences are sort of bunching up. What do you see coming towards March? And by the way, let's quote on the California teams, USC, UCLA out here. How are we going to do out here for Pac-12?
Yeah, Andy Enfield's done a terrific job at USC. UCLA has an excellent team. The Baylor, as the defending champion, has been hanging around the top 10. The reason they were all moving around because they were all playing each other early in the year, but now we're in conference, and the Big 12 is really, really deep. The Big 10 is very deep. The ACC is a little down this year. Probably get 4 or 5 teams in the tournament, but I think it is there certainly is no prohibitive favorite this year going in. I would guess Purdue may have the most balanced team of size and perimeter scoring. But that's the beauty of the tournament. When in the NBA, when you play a 7-game series, the best team wins. You can steal a game, maybe 2, but you can't steal 4.
Right.
In the NCAA tournament, 1 game, that's all it takes. And, if you're hot for 6 games, then you win it.
Well, you said that all it takes is 1 game. I would say actually all it takes is a moment of faith.
Yeah.
So actually my favorite thing of the year is the montage of one shining moment. And I think actually to end the basketball season each year, for me, that's a moment of faith, right? Like one shining moment, as you said before, that each day, each moment, God should shine within each of our souls as well.
No, I agree. And you know, you see it in the faces, the joy, the sorrow, the pain. There's a gamut of emotions, and it's all through God.
We are so thrilled that Michael Gminski has joined us from ACC Network, NBA veteran, and as we just heard this morning, truly a man of faith. Mike, it's so wonderful to meet you. We hope that when you're out here doing some broadcasts, Pac-12 and NCAA tournament, you visit us here at Sinai Temple in Los Angeles Jewish community. Mike, God bless. Thanks so much.
God bless. Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.